Yeah, I think we have one of you have video camera. Oh no, she's gone. So basically, I'm just cannot see anybody, and I think probably we wait a little bit if think because there's more students join us. Yeah, I don't know whether Deepa and Syria, are you here? Or oh yeah, just call Miss Marino. She's the one who has the permission number. I'm so sorry. I didn't reply this as soon as possible. Hopefully, I give you the suggestion now will help. Okay, okay. Yeah, just call Miss. She's the assistant of finance department, and she basically has all the rights to give permission number and this stuff. And I think her office actually located on third floor. Yeah. Her office is on third floor. I think yeah, you can send her email and ask her to call you when she's available. That's fine. Yeah. She's like a very old school, so she prefer call. But if you leave a phone number, probably she will call you. Okay. Do you have any other questions? Okay. Um, Today I will start talking about chapter 1, and the chapter 1 is all of concepts. So for me, because I'm not a native speaker, explain concepts is really hard for me. So what I do is like I combine those concepts with a lot of videos. So I think I explain the concepts as clear as I can, as clear as possible. Then I combine those concepts with an video. I feel like watching a video will help you remember and understand it really great. What I'm gonna do is like I have two ways. I will play the video on my screen and then I share my screen and I try to see whether I have a very fancy system now for this class. So I hope the system will work. And then the second way is that I will share the multimedia through the WebEx. I don't know whether it works really good or it just not as good as this like my homemade system. So let's try out. So if I play the video on my screen, I will just skip those advertisement. There's a lot of advertisement attached to YouTube, especially at the beginning. I just want make you understand that those advertisement is not my opinion. I cannot choose which advertisement YouTube play for you. So if I share the video through the multimedia, you may see a advertisement. Sometimes it's very political. I hope you understand that I'm not either side of the parties or political sides. I'm totally neutral, and I don't want this affect your opinion to me. Just want to make this everything clear. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Okay, here. Let me make sure we are recording so I can share the videos online. Okay, so today I'm gonna talk about multinational, an overview of multinational financial management. And we have a lot of, we have several key points that you need to know. So for this chapter, include the Kahoot, I will use this full name like multinational corporation. This means like the corporation actually has some business with other countries except the US or their home country. They have other business located overseas. But from next chapter, I will just use this short one to refer the multinational corporation, the MNC, which is a multinational corporation. So when you see these three numbers, three letters, like MNC, you know that is a multinational corporation. That firm has some subsidiaries or business overseas. So that's the first thing I want to let you know. And we will talk a little bit about the agency problem. And then I will talk a little bit about the management structure of a multinational corporation. There's two large categories of the management structures. One is centralized, another is decentralized. So it basically means like what's the control? How strong is the control of the parent firm? And finally, we will talk about what's the method to conduct international business. So any questions before I actually start? No, looks like no. So I'm going to move on. So multinational corporations, usually we write MNC for short, means like firms that engage in some form of international business. So we will focus on, we have some folks, like not all multinational corporations are the focus of our semester. Our class actually focus on those multinational corporations who is based on US. It's a US based. So we do not study like Lenovo, who is a China-based one, or Toshiba, which is a Japan-based one. Because we right now are in US, so we study whose parents are located in US and their foreign subsidiaries that is fully owned by this parent. So if there's a subsidiary that is joint ventured by a US-based firm and a China-based firm, that subsidiary is not in our scope. So just want to make here really clear that we focus on multinational corporation, US-based multinational corporation, and the fully owned subsidiaries. So that is our focus for the whole semester. There's a lot of multinational corporations, especially in US, because as we know, US basically is the heaven of multinational corporation. I wouldn't say all, but the majority of US company or corporation has part of business overseas. So there's three types of multinational corporation. The reasons why they do they want to expand their business overseas, like because in US we speak English, we have the same culture, but for example Asia, their culture are totally different. Then why you want to do business with someone have a totally different culture? I mean, talk about the culture. I feel a lot of culture shock when I come to US. For example, instead of talking about those multinational corporations, I would like to use one example from my individual peer experience. So I'm a Chinese. I come from China, and for Chinese people, especially like in my generation, we do not really like debt. Like I don't like debt. I don't like any loans. If you look at the analysis of credit card usage, you will find that Asian people has the smallest usage of their credit card loans. Like if I have a credit line like 10,000, I use like 1,000 probably, but I pay the full balance every month. I just don't like it. It's more like we just taught to be act like that way. But when I come to US or not like in China, the new generations, the millennials, like who born after 2000, they are more adapted to that. So I can think about that if I have a firm, I will not like a bond at all. I do not want to borrow from the bank and I don't want to issue bond. This is my personal preference or my generation's preference, which who come from Asia. But for new generations and for example US people, you are very comfortable to borrow because you think as long as I make a higher return than the interest rate, I'm fine. I don't see like which one is good or correct or incorrect. It's just two preference. Like a lot of US company, they use issuing debt and they do the expansion and they are very successful. So I can feel this culture difference. So why under such a big culture difference together with political risk, like trade wars, there's two nations do not like each other, why the firms still want to expand their business to another country? There's three main reasons. The first one is the firm generated more than half of their sales in foreign countries. In that country, there's no such a firm that can provide the product for their local customers. So that's a big opportunity. Those firms are include ExxonMobil's and Fortune brands. The second reason, firms have more than half of their assets in foreign countries. So those are like Dow Chemicals, IBM, and Nike. Let's take Nike as an example. Why Nike has a lot of factories overseas? One problem is that, not problem, one reason is that the labor cost in Asia is quite low. It's not a good thing or a bad thing. I'm not saying the cheap labor is good or bad. I'm saying that that's an opportunity that you can produce the same products at a lower cost. Like take China as an example, because previously there's a lot of company build a factory in China. When you do your project, you will see that a lot of you guys like Nike and Adidas and a lot of US based company, you will find that they build factories in China because of the cheap labor. And that is the lack of regulation. Because in China, there's no minimum wage, no laws related to minimum wage. As I know now, there's no such a law. So another reason is that China has such a large population. Because the population is super large, so you have a lot of labors. This is more like a supply and a demand. When the supply of labor is large, then the price of labor will be, relatively lower. So that's the reason why a firm has a lot of their assets in foreign countries. That's one reason. There's other reasons. This is just one. The third reason is that a lot of technology firms expand overseas to capitalize their technology. Those are big tech companies in US, Apple, Facebook, and Twitter. Facebook actually is not in China now. Twitter, China has a similar website, so I will focus on Apple. So for the technology advantage of Apple, before Cook becomes the CEO of Apple, the CEO of Apple actually is Steve Jobs. and Steve Jobs do not have any Apple stores in China. But by then, like 2008 to 2010, that's when I come to US. When I first see iPhone, I was so amazed. It's super impressive that how a phone can have so many functions that I never see that in China before. So after Steve Jobs, passed away and Cook actually takes the position, he has a lot of Apple store in China, and this brings the profit margin of Apple double, even tripled. The net income of Apple actually increased a lot. This is how the technology firms actually capitalize or profit from their technology advantage. Because Chinese people, when the first Apple store opened in China, I still remember the news, like there's a super long line right before that because people really want this fancy technology stuff, by themselves. So that's the main three main reasons why there's a lot of difficulties when you expand your business overseas, but companies still want to do that, and that makes our course very valuable. So this is a question. I mean, because when we compare the multinational corporation with domestic corporation, so we first want to know what's the goal of the multinational corporation. This question just help you refresh your memory. You learn this. What's the goal of a domestic company? Anyone still remember this? I will give you a few minutes just to try to refresh your memory. Do you still remember when you study 344, which focus on pure domestic companies? What's the goal of the company? Yeah, we have an answer from Abby Fuller, like maximizing the stockholders' wealth, right? So that's the goal of a domestic company. So for the multinational corporation manager, the goal is the same. They try to maximize the firm's value, or put it in another way, the existing stock price. Why is that? So think about a publicly traded corporation. You buy a share of it. You buy a share of Apple, for example. Right now, you like which type of firms you really like to buy to invest it in, like Apple, Tesla. Those firms you buy their stocks because you want a higher stock price. They want their stock price grow fast. No matter whether you try to maximize the net income or market shares, the ultimate goal for those firms are for buying those firms' stock is to maximize the stock price. So from this perspective, the goal of multinational corporation manager is the same to the goal of domestic companies. So some common financial decisions of multinational corporation include, first, whether should we pursue a new business in a particular country. For example, right now we are a domestic companies and we really want to expand our market shares and increase our net income globally. The first decision is like if we pursue a new business, which country we should start, or which country we should build a factory. So this is the very first question you should ask yourself as a multinational corporation manager. So after you decide, okay, for example, we found that Japan has a really good market, and there's no company in Japan do the same business or similar business. So in this case, we decided, okay, we will expand our business to Japan. What's the next question? The next question is whether we should, after we start this new business, and we are successful, then we should think about whether we should expand the business. Like for example, we decided to expand our business in Japan, and then we found that the local customer really like our product. We have one factory before. Then our second question is whether should we have more factory or more stores. Like Apple in China, they first have one Apple store, and people just go to the store to buy iPhone and iPad crazily. And then Cook naturally think, should we have more Apple store in China? Probably like we should have a Apple store in each major city. We have in China we have 4 major cities. We should have 4 Apple stores. If this is not enough, should we have like more Apple stores in every large cities, not only major cities, like large cities? So that is the second question you should ask. And the third question is like when you have expansions, how could we finance the expansions in this particular country? Should we use debt or should we issue stocks? So for that is like borrowing, right? You suffer borrowing cost. And for stock, you need to pay shareholders dividend. So those are, some manager will prefer debt because the borrowing cost actually is lower than the dividend. However, or dividend, we would say cost of equity, not only dividend, the cost of equity. However, some manager may think, oh, I just don't like that because that has a chance to put me in bankrupt. For example, there's some difficult times like the pandemic we have currently. We never, think about in 2019, last year, you never thought that we have such a large pandemic that takes so long that will affect our life from all aspects. Those black swans in finance sometimes just destroy a lot of firms. So some manager may think, I just don't like that. I prefer issuing stock, even the cost is higher. That is also one question. And the last question is that whether to discontinue operations in a particular country. So that is because if the country has a really bad economy or the customer just don't like it. This is more like the Starbucks in Australia. For some reason, Australian people just don't like Starbucks. So it's really hard for Starbucks to make profit in Australia. In this case, Starbucks, the manager needed to make this decision. Should we continue the subsidiaries here or should we discontinue it? So those are 4 major questions or decisions related to multinational corporations. Any questions? Okay, no questions. I'm gonna move to the agency problem. So for the agency problem, actually, this is caused by the goal of the multinational corporation managers. So when there's a conflict between the manager, let me just switch to the pen so I can write down this. So as we all know that the goal of multinational corporation manager is to maximize their form value or existing stock price. This is what shareholders want. So shareholders want the firm to maximize their wealth. However, in the corporation because there's a separation of ownership and management. So the managers usually are not owners of the firm. So in this case, manager may has their own interest or their own goals that is not aligned with the goals of shareholders. So this will cause this so-called agency problem. That is the conflict of goals between the managers and the shareholders. So one example I presented here is that there's a company, a fake company called Seattle Coal, and he has a subsidiary in Singapore. So naturally, you will hire a manager in local, so they speak the local language and they know the local culture. So naturally, this company hire a manager in Singapore in the Singapore subsidiaries. However, this manager do not operate this subsidiary to maximize the shareholders' price, shareholders' wealth, and the stock price. What he do is that the manager try to hire a lot of employees to do the work that he was assigned to do. So it's more like an empire building. The manager want to build an empire in Singapore in this subsidiary so he can enjoy this achievement that a lot of people is under his management. And then the subsidiary is experiencing losses every quarter. So this is a very natural, it's a very common examples for the agency problem. And I have read a paper before, and that in that paper, the author actually investigated the agency problem. He gave a lot of surveys to the CEOs or top managers, and all those are anonymous. So the CEOs sometimes disclose a lot of information that the shareholders do not know, but he's anonymous, so he's safe. One CEO said he used a private jet of the company to send a bundle of flour to his wife. I mean, he actually works in New York City and his wife was on a vacation in Los Angeles. So he sent a bundle of flowers from New York to Los Angeles to his wife, use the private jet of the firm. That's a very extreme case that the agency problem costs the shareholders' wealth a lot. Private jet is very expensive. This trip cost, definitely more than $10,000. And if we have two companies, one is pure domestic firms. One thing I wanted to say that in all the corporations, there's agency problems. Agency problems can be alleviated, can be reduced, but it's really hard to eliminate it at all, totally eliminated. So the costs usually are higher for multinational corporations than for pure domestic firms. There are several reasons. So if everything else is equal, like the firm has a similar size, similar type of managers, and the one firm is purely domestic, another firm is multinational corporation. Which one will have higher agency cost? Anyone have any idea? Take a guess. Okay, we have one answer, the multinational corporation. Okay, that's correct. And she gave us a reason, cannot oversee as well. That's correct. That's our very first reason. So basically the cost is for multinational corporation are usually higher. The first thing is what Abby mentioned, like monitoring manager from the overseas, from US if the manager want to monitor the subsidiary manager in China or in Japan, it's very difficult. It's really hard. You cannot just fly back and forth very frequently because you have the headquarters located in US. And the second reason is that foreign subsidiary managers, they have different cultures. So sometimes they just cannot understand why we want to maximize the stock price. So here is one example, like some foreign managers believe that they shouldn't maximize the stock price. Instead of maximizing stock price, their goal should to serve their respective employees. This is especially true in Japan, because if you check Japan, the older generations usually they graduate from undergraduate program and they found a job in a company and then they will serve the company for their whole life. They never jump from one company to another one. So in this case, the manager will have a lot of respective employees that is very old and serve the company for like more than 30 years. And those managers will try to put those employees above the interest of those respective employees above the interest of owners or shareholders. This is more like an Asian culture. So if you don't know the culture, the local culture, it's really hard. If the multinational corporation do not understand this culture, it will cause a lot of chaos. And finally, because our question asks if everything else is equal. However, it's really hard to have this comparison because for multinational corporations, usually they are much larger companies. Pure domestic companies relatively have smaller size. So in this case, because the size is large, it's harder to monitoring every subsidiaries for the multinational corporation. So that's the three reasons why agency problem is more severe in multinational corporation. Do you have any questions? I'm gonna stop a little bit and let you ask a question if you have. Okay, looks like no questions. So just let me know if you have any questions. Stop me or just type in the chat box, and I will always check the chat box. So how to reduce the agency problem? As I just said, we can reduce the agency problem, but we cannot eliminate it, totally eliminate it. The first way is parity control of agency problem, because the manager is supervised by the board. So the parent firms can clearly communicate, of course, first communicate, the board can communicate the goals for each subsidiary to ensure that the manager know what's the goal of the firm. For example, if a US-based company has a subsidiary in Japan, so the parent firm should clearly tell the manager of the Japan subsidiary that our goal is maximize the stock price instead of serve the respective employees or other goals of the manager. We should put the shareholders' interest as the first priority. They should let each manager know this. And the second thing is that the parent should oversee the subsidiary decisions to check whether each subsidiary's manager are satisfying this goal. So you should regularly check their decisions to make sure that they follow this goal, maximizing the stock price. And then finally, of course, those are just the communications. The first two are just the communications. We needed to design the compensation plan to reward those managers who satisfy the goals. So one common thing the parent can do is that just give the manager stocks. So they can give the manager stocks, and if the manager has stocks, they also want the stock price goes up because they will have more bonus. The second thing is options, like stock options. If the option is more like a right? For example, the current stock price is $100, and the option exercise price is $120. So, which means that if the stock price is higher than $120, the manager can earn some money. So in this case, the manager will try to maximize the stock price. So that is the parent control. Basically, it's like the parent of the firm will control the manager of each subsidiary. And the second way is called the corporate control of agency problems. So in this case, the board and CEOs cannot only tell the managers. If the manager, after you tell them what's the goals and give them stocks, their performance is still really bad, their interest is still not aligned with the firm, then in this case, the firm, the board or the CEO probably think about we should just sell that to subsidiaries. So this happened for IBM, the PC department. So IBM actually has this, ThinkPad department that produce personal computers called ThinkPad. And that department, for some reason, do not earn any profit for like a long period of time, like a decade or something. And it's like that department caused a lot of loss that other department has to pay those loss for that department. And finally, the manager, the CEO, and the board of the IBM decided, okay, let's just get rid of this subsidiary or department. They sell the PC department to Lenovo. Lenovo actually acquires IBM PC department. And after Lenovo acquires this PC business, what's their first action? We know that the manager is really bad. The department is badly managed. So Lenovo just remove those management team and replace the management team by their own managers. So this is more like a threat to the managers. If you have really bad performance, the parent will just get rid of you and you will be removed from the position. And also institutional investors like mutual fund and pension fund, they will complain to the board of directors. Like institutional investors, those are wholesale investors. They have a large portion of shares. So think about as individuals, for me, when I buy apples, I just buy 10 shares. Tesla 5 shares because it's expensive. But for institutional investors, they probably buy like 20% of Apple or 10% of Apple, 5% of Tesla. So they have a very large voting right. They can complain to the board of director that if the manager has this bad performance, we will just sell all our holdings, all your company's stocks. So in this case, the board and the CEO will try to remove those managers and try to boost the performance of that subsidiary or department. So that is the so-called another type of corporation controls. So that's a very funny story here for Apple. Like Steve Jobs was forced out of Apple in 1985 after a long power struggle with the company's board and its then CEO John Scanlon. So basically, John Scanlon and the board just don't like the strategy of Steve Jobs. Even though Apple was founded by Jobs, they still kick him out from Apple. And of course, after a while, they found that the new CEO, John Scali, he cannot make Apple make more money, so they just ask Steve Jobs back to Apple. But this is like the power of board. Like the board can force the founder, leave the company. So the last one is Sarbanes-Oxley Act, and for this act is because there's a scandal called Enron. I'm gonna play a video of Enron, and then we will introduce why what's actually the Sarbanes-Oxley Act talks and why we have those items in the act. So I'm gonna use the first way. I will just share the screen of my video here. And just let me know whether you can hear the voice or you can watch the video smoothly.
Most of us are familiar.
Let me make the sound larger.
Familiar with the infamous Enron scandal. And here's what I'm guessing most people know about it. The company cooked books and pulled off some shady accounting tricks. They were caught and now cease to exist as a result. But this is a very thin understanding of the subject. There was so much stuff that went down, I can't even do it justice in a short video like this. If you want to become an expert on it, there's a movie I can recommend. It's called Enron, The Smartest Guys in the Room. It's nearly 2 hours about the scandal, and honestly, I think that's even rushing it. The entire ordeal is so complicated that there can easily be an entire college course centered around it, and that course would be for the advanced students. Wouldn't it be great if someone created a YouTube video that concisely explained it in a way that's both entertaining and easy to understand? Enron formed through a merger in 1985 between two energy companies. That's what Enron was, by the way, an energy company. When I say that, it's a huge simplification because Enron was involved in so many things in complex ways that the average person didn't even come close to understanding exactly what the company did. It was founded by a man named Ken Lay. You may want to remember that name. Now let's fast forward around to the year 2000. It was a fantastic company and very attractive for investors. At the time, they were thought of as being one of the world's leaders in business. I would say it's like how we view companies like Apple and Google today, but that's not even close to how amazing Enron was. They were making money and growing at a rate that no one had ever seen before. So here, I'll pretend to be a financial advisor helping you decide which stock you may want to buy. Here we go. I've looked over all the numbers, and I strongly advise you to invest in Enron. They're one of the fastest growing and most respected companies around today. I'll just show you a few numbers to support my advice. As a financial advisor, I look at companies' revenue, debt, and past stock trends. Here's Enron's revenue over the past 5 years. Just look at that growth. It's quicker than I've ever seen. I also checked out their debt, and it's very reasonable compared to their equity, meaning they're in great standing with creditors and have very little chance of going bankrupt. And as far as stock trends, here's a graph showing the stock price over the past few years. Just 3 years ago, they were in the $20 range. Today, it's well above 80. I've been advising clients to purchase this for some time now, and I've yet to have someone disappointed by their decision, except one guy who decided against it, and he's kicking himself right now. Plus, while I was reviewing their year 2000 annual report, it was filled with statements straight from Enron themselves saying how they're expecting future growth and success in the future. So Enron is well respected, has incredible revenue growth, low debt, and a solid history of unheard stock growth. So what do you think? Do you want to invest in Enron? Okay, I'm done being the advisor right now. Since I couldn't hear your answer, I'll assume you said yes. You want to invest in Enron. And if you said no, that's a foolish answer at the time. Based on the information available, practically anyone who knew anything about the stock market would say to jump on it. So now you've invested heavily in Enron. Now let's fast forward 1 year and see how you did. So it turns out the stock didn't go up like everyone had projected. In fact, it's gone down just a tad. What was in the $80 range when you invested is now in the 50 to 60 cent range. so you've effectively lost all your money. I'm making light of it here, but there were thousands of people that experienced this, including the Enron employees. They invested heavily in 401ks and retirement plans that were tied up in Enron stock. And really, can you blame them? But Enron went bankrupt in December of 2001. Thousands of people lost their jobs, retirement funds, and any other money they had invested in Enron. So what happened between this year and the last? As it turns out, all these numbers I just showed you were just an illusion. Back when I was your financial advisor, I was advising you based on false numbers. Take the revenue I just showed you. It's all fake. How so? Here's what Enron did to make it appear so high. It's thanks to something called mark-to-market accounting. Its effect is basically being able to recognize revenue when you have no revenue. Here's an example of something that actually happened with Enron. In 2000, they signed a 20-year contract with Blockbuster. Enron thought the contract would result in profits in excess of $100 million. So only 3 more years and the contract between Enron and Blockbuster will be expired. Well, obviously the contract didn't work out and was actually doomed from the start. It had to do with bandwidth and internet streaming, but the technology didn't work and Blockbuster ended the contract. Here's the problem. Enron recognized over $100 million in revenue from the deal. It doesn't quite seem like they earned $100 million in revenue from the deal, yet they reported $100 million in revenue from the deal. Then, as an advisor, I looked at that number to tell you that you should buy Enron, and they did this far more than just the Blockbuster contract. All they had to do was project some earnings, and boom, they had earnings. It essentially allowed them to put any number they wanted in that earnings column. Another thing I looked at when advising to buy the stock was their liabilities. Well, as you may have guessed, their liabilities were completely false as well. How they pulled this one off is a little more complicated. But in short, they set up side companies and pushed the debt over to them. So all of a sudden, Enron's debt problem was solved. Obviously, they still had the debt, but it was no longer on their financial reports, and therefore non-existent as far as investors can tell. I also looked at the stock trends. These high stock prices were a result of investors being fooled by these numbers for an extended period of time. So the stock was trading for over $80 per share, whereas if the company hadn't pulled these accounting tricks, it would have been trading for a fraction of that. There were numerous other accounting frauds committed, but these were the biggest and most impactful. But there's another part to this. What about the auditors? The job of an auditor is to look over all these financial statements to ensure the company's position is fairly represented. Every public company legally has to have their financial statements audited. The primary purpose of an auditor is to prevent things like this from happening, so the investors can confidently use the reports to make informative decisions. Had the auditors done their job properly, they would have seen red flags all over the place. But they weren't doing their job properly. They weren't really doing it at all. They were being paid by Enron to look the other way. The name of these auditors? Arthur Andersen. At the time, there were 5 major accounting firms: Deloitte, KPMG, PwC, Ernst & Young, and Arthur Andersen. Almost all major companies would use one of these accounting firms to audit their financial statements. Now it's down to 4 major accounting firms because Arthur Andersen didn't survive the scandal. See, an auditor survives by their reputation. When investors see that PwC audited a set of statements, they trust that they're accurate. But now, if Arthur Andersen audits something, the investors are still questioning whether or not it's accurate, which makes investors avoid the company. So all of Arthur Andersen's customers switched over to one of the other 4 firms. The auditors didn't do their job in detecting it, but who's responsible for the fraud on Enron's end? 2 executives from the company are pretty heavily blamed: Ken Lay, who I mentioned earlier, and Jeff Skilling. They were both found guilty of conspiracy and fraud, among other things. Skilling is set to be released in February of 2019, and Ken Lay is dead. He died of a heart attack at the time between the verdict and the sentencing in 2006. He was 64 years old. There were several other people involved in the scandal, many of which walked away with millions of dollars and sold their stock right before the massive drop. This scandal, along with others like it at the time, promoted a new set of accounting rules that dramatically changed the accounting industry. because it clearly wasn't functioning perfectly. Now auditors have much stricter independence rules. Also, the CEO and the CFO have to certify the financial statements, so they can't later on deny that they ever saw them, which happened with Enron.
On the date I left, I absolutely unequivocally thought the company was in good shape.
Again, this was just a brief review of the scandal. Some of the things I didn't cover include intentionally causing power outages in California, Ken Lay's ties to former President George W. Bush, Enron's involvement with the election of former Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, how everything was ultimately revealed, and much more detail about the individuals responsible and how much they profited from the whole scandal. If you want to hear more about any of these, I recommend you watch the full-length movie I mentioned earlier. And I just want to say, it's important to remember that all the shareholders who lost money from the scandal weren't bad investors. They were victims. Victims of crimes committed by Enron and Arthur Andersen. The information they were using to purchase the stock was promised to be accurate, when in reality it was far from it. At the time, Enron's bankruptcy was the largest bankruptcy ever to occur in American history, which makes this one of the biggest scandals in American history. Now that it's over 15 years old, we can all look back at it at a safe distance as one of the most interesting scandals in American history. Let me know in the comments any thoughts you have on Enron, Arthur Andersen, or anything else I discussed in the video. I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Enron is a company that deals with everyone with absolute integrity. We play by all of the rules. We stand by our word. We mean what we say what we mean.
Thank you for watching.
Okay, that is the Enron brief introduction of Enron scandal. Let me put the mic here. And then that's think about this large scandal. It caused a lot of jobless people. A lot of people lost their pension fund, and also a lot of investors suffer, like they lose their principals, like lenders lose their principals, and shareholders lose their savings, like the money they put to buy the Enron stocks. So that's the reason why finally we have this Sarbanes-Oxley Act. The purpose of Sarbanes-Oxley Act is to increase the transparency between the firms and the shareholders. This act try to make the shareholders know what is going on in this firm. Firm is more like a black box, and they do the financial report. We can take a glance, but we cannot know for every day what did the firm actually do. It's more like a black box. So the Sarbanes-Oxley Act try to make this black box a little bit more transparent. And here is a requirement. So the first, to make a centralized database of information. Basically, everyone in the firm knows. I mean, Enron scandal not only hurt shareholders or bondholders, it also hurt those employees, because those employees, they lost their job, they lost their pension fund, they lost everything. And so that's the reason why this act asked the firm to establish a centralized database of information, so everyone in the firm know what's going on with this company, and ensure all the data are reported consistently among subsidiaries. So we cannot say this the subsidiary A actually report under one standard and another subsidiary report on another standard. The company should have a uniform standard for the financial reporting. And finally, not finally, like the third one, the firm should have a system that automatically checks the abnormal activities. If there is any abnormal activities, the system will alert at least the higher level managers. So those managers know there is something going wrong. And also, speeding the process of information. So basically, previously, probably each subsidiary, reported to the parent once a year. Now, this act asks them to report probably every month. So if there is a big scandal there in the subsidiary, the parent will notice it very fast. And lastly, because in the video, Kinley and another guy, the manager, they said that they do not know what's going on in the firm. So they denied their knowledge of the firm. So in this case, this act try to prevent this scandal happening in the future. What they do is that for the auditing, like the auditor audited the financial statement, and then every manager related to this provide those data needed to sign their names to show that I know those data and I know those data are accurate. So that is the 5 main things this act required. So that is basically the agency problem. Do you have any questions before we jump to the next section? Okay. So I'm gonna move on, and if you have any questions, just stop me or let me know. So there's 2 types of management structure for multinational corporation. I will just briefly mention this. There's one type called the centralized. So you can see there's 2 subsidiaries here. Here is subsidiary A. Subsidiary A has a cash management, inventory, and accounts receivable management, and the financing at the subsidiary and the capital expenditure of subsidiary A. And on the right-hand side, that is subsidiary B. They have exactly the same department, but every department, instead of report to the subsidiary, they directly report to the parent firm. So in this case, the parent firm has higher level control of each subsidiary. So basically, they know the cash management of subsidiary A and B every day. They know what's the inventory of each subsidiary every day. So the advantage of this structure is that the parent know exactly what happened in each subsidiary. But the disadvantage of this structure is that this will reduce the productivity a little bit. Because for the cash management, if you want to pay a supplier, you need to report to the parent and get approved. And then after the parent approves this transaction, you can pay to the suppliers. So it reduces productivity a little bit. The second structure called the decentralized one. So basically, there's a financial manager in each subsidiaries, and those financial department report to the manager directly instead of report to the parent. So for the subsidiary A, they will report to the manager of subsidiary A, and for subsidiary B, they will report to subsidiary B. So they do not report to the parent firm. And finally, or regularly, those 2 managers will report to parent firm respectively. So for this type of structures, the benefit is that it will increase the productivity a lot, because the decision will be very fast. The manager of subsidiary, they know everything. The manager is closely related to every department of subsidiary A. He has a better knowledge of subsidiary A, so he or she can get back to every transaction very fast. But for the disadvantage of this structure is that the parent firm has less control over each subsidiary. The parent firm probably do not know very clear what's going on with each subsidiary. The subsidiary becomes a black box now. So that's 2 types of subsidiaries. And here's one question that you can take a couple minutes to think about: how the internet facilitates management control. I mean, without the internet, definitely the manager want to know something, they need to call or they need to write a mail. Right now we have the internet. How this facilitated the management control? I will give you a few minutes. You can think about, or if you can talk to your classmates, you can talk to your classmates. Okay, we have one answer, like Abby said, more efficient, timely, and accurate. That's correct. So the very first one, it makes the monitor action easy and timely and more accurate. And the second one, it's very easy to communicate with these foreign subsidiaries. So think about previously, if a CEO want to know a Japan-based subsidiary, he needed to call, or if he really want to know the details, he or she needed to fly to Japan. But now he can have a lot of, online meetings and get more information from the subsidiaries. It's kind of make the black box more transparent. And the last one, make it easy to get information. So that's this question. Any question related to this part? Okay, so I'm gonna introduce the direct foreign investment. Again, if you have any question, just don't hesitate to let me know. So direct foreign investment, this actually is a very hard, I mean, sometimes I don't know why, but it's a little bit hard to understand. It's harder to tell the difference between the direct foreign investment and what we will tell next. That is a method to conduct the international business. Sometimes we get mixed with this definition and the method of international business. So the direct foreign investment is like if the firm do some investment overseas, and that is the investment refers as direct foreign investment. It's not classified as one method of conducting international business. It's more like what we discuss is like whether this method there are 6 methods in total. We will talk later. These 6 methods, whether those methods involve direct foreign investment. For example, a company build a subsidiary or factory in Japan or in Europe, that is direct foreign investment. But this method is called, build a new subsidiary. So we need to differentiate those two. So I want to first mention what is investment. So an investment is like you buy an asset, that the asset can be used more than one time, can last longer than 1 year, I would say. So, and also another important thing is that the asset will generate income, or in the future may appreciate. It's not always appreciated, but you must use the asset to generate income. That's the most important thing. So, for example, if REITs, like a real estate investment trust, if the trust buy an apartment, the apartment will generate revenue. That is the rent, to rent out those apartments. So that is an investment. So if a REIT, like real estate investment trust, buy an apartment in Japan, that is a direct foreign investment. And if the REITs buy a shopping mall, they can rent the shops out, and they can receive some fees. So those are also a direct foreign investment if a US-based firm buy a shopping mall in Europe. So that is the investment. Equipment, buildings, land are all investment. So here are some, examples of investment. The direct foreign investment again is you buy assets or goods that can be used more than one time, usually last for more than 1 year, and in another country. That is called direct foreign investment. So here is an example. In 2017, US-based Apple announced that there is 507.1 million investment to boost its research and development work in China. So basically, they invest this amount of money in China. That is called direct foreign investment. That is, this amount of money is called direct foreign investment. However, this is the method is called build a new subsidiary or department in another country. So we need to differentiate between the direct foreign investment, the definition, and the method to conduct the international business. So I hope I make here clear enough, but I will re-emphasize this after I finish all the introduction of the method. So the method is like we have a lot of method. The easiest one or the very straightforward one, the one with minimum risk is called international trade. So basically, international trade do not require any direct foreign investment. If you just do tradings, you don't need to buy an asset overseas and put it there to generate income. No, there's no requirement for that. For international trade, it's very conservative if the firm is still young and previously it's a pure domestic firms, and this is the first time to conduct international business. That's the safest way. So if you want to penetrate the market, you can exporting your products. You can sell to customers in other countries. That's totally fine. No direct foreign investment. You don't need to buy an asset in that country, just sell your products. That's it. Obtain supplies at a lower cost by importing, like for example, the car manufacturers, they want to produce cars, so they need steels, and they just import steels. That's fine. They do not need to buy any assets in China or in Australia. They just buy steels. So that is international trade. The risk is minimum, no capital at risk, because you do not need to put capitals or money to buy assets. So there's no capital at risk. So that is the international trade. And here is one question, like how the internet facilitate the international trade. I will give you some minutes, probably you can think by yourself or you can search online. How the internet make the international trade easier? Why the internet make the international trade easier? In which way? Any idea? Okay, we have an answer. Davin. I don't know. Let me know if I pronounce your name in an awkward way. So Davin said the will facilitate the e-commerce. So that is definitely a way allowed the firm to advertise their products. Thank you. advertise their products and accept orders on their website. Basically helps do the firms to do the e-commerce. So I think that is the international trade. There's other ways, like Abby said, the buyers and sellers can connect directly and update the price. That is definitely a great point. Like the buyers and sellers can meet each other without flying to the country, and they can negotiate the price. So the negotiation process is more it's smoother. Anything else? Okay, I think this question can be left as again, Abby mentioned that the buyer can get the shopping information easier. That is definitely a good way. Like from my personal experience, I want to buy a lot of Chinese groceries, and previously I needed to drive to Madison or Milwaukee, and then I needed to go to an Asian market to buy, soybean sauce. And after I think after 2013, 2014, there's a Asian grocery website, and I can buy soybean sauce from that website. It definitely facilitated this, shopping procedures. And sometimes I can buy products, and they will ship directly from Japan or China. So I think the e-commerce definitely make people's life more convenient. And especially in the pandemic, there's a lot of new e-commerce emerged, like Fresh Go. I don't know whether you heard about that, and the Chobas. Those are like you can buy fresh products online, and they will deliver the products to your home. Okay, I think I'm gonna stop here today. And next class we will play the Kahoot game after I finish all the method. And thank you very much for coming. And I will stay here a little bit. If you have any question, you can ask me. Otherwise, you're free to go and have a great day.